Bonjour à tous, je m'appelle David, bienvenue à Dave's English, je suis un prof américain d'anglais et aujourd'hui je vais vous parler d'anglais parce que it's an English channel. That's what I do here. So hello, welcome to my channel, and today I want to talk about common mistakes or maybe not mistakes that French speakers make when they are using English. So stay tuned, we're going to go over those mistakes, but before we start, I want to mention a few things in this video. The first thing I want to talk about is that I have been thinking about making a website or maybe a small little channel that helps people who are French speakers learn English, that's more geared specifically towards them. If you think that this might be something that'll help you, if you are a French speaker, please let me know. But I will also say, if you ever check out Lay English, this is an amazing channel for French speakers in French that the rules are spot on, and she does a perfect job with her channel. It's one that I highly recommend, and if you are an A1 or A2 or even a B1 learner of English and or French, I highly recommend her channel. So the second thing I want to talk about is the flag that I put up there, the Quebec flag. And I know that to say that Francophones in Canada are simply Quebecois is an absolute flaw. I absolutely know that. There are Franco-Ontarians, there are Franco-Manitobans, there's a large Francophone population in New Brunswick, the Métis. I understand this. I did my degree at McGill University, so I absolutely know. But there are two fundamental reasons why I used the Quebec flag in the thumbnail. The first reason is, for good or bad, is that the Quebec flag has become the symbol of Francophone Canadians, unfortunately, even though it doesn't include everyone, it's really only the citizens of Quebec. But even the materials we see nowadays have the Quebec flag or something related to Quebec on it. So if I show you this book I have, it actually has a fleur-de-lis here, but with the flag colors of Quebec. So even though the fleur-de-lis is on the Franco-Ontarian flag, it's not in green, it is in blue. So unfortunately, that's the reality we live in today. And the second reason why is because there are some things I notice amongst French Canadian speakers I address at the end of the video. However, I will say this phenomenon that I hear is more amongst Quebecois than it necessarily is amongst other French-speaking Canadians. And this is also a reason why I put it in, because it seems to be more Quebec-centered than anything else. But I want you to know, I know this flag doesn't represent all French-speaking Canadians. It doesn't at all. But I just want you to know the reason why I put the Quebec flag up there, because unfortunately there isn't just one Francophone flag for Canada. The first mistake I want to talk about is present perfect and present perfect continuous. Now, a lot of French speakers don't use these tenses, and it's usually because they're very familiar with the preposition depuis. And usually in English, if you're going to use depuis in French, we would many times use that in a present perfect or present perfect continuous sentence. So a French speaker might say, I am working here since 4 years. And that would be incorrect for a number of reasons. But the main one, or the first one I should say, is that it is a present perfect continuous sentence. So we would need to use have. Another problem with depuis is that a lot of French speakers automatically translate that to since, but we can use it as for. So let's look at the example that I just gave you. The correct way to say it would be, I have been working here for 4 years. And see, it's not since, it's for. So you want to make sure, if you are French, yes, you can translate depuis to since, but also you need to know when it is since or when it is for, because that's very important, because there are differences. The next mistake I want to talk about is not pronouncing S at the end of words. Now, there are two reasons why this can be. So the first one is just pronunciation. So a lot of words in French just don't pronounce that last S. Like Paris, for example, and in English we say Paris. And this could be a reason why. The second one, and I think this is a lot of it as well, is that when we're speaking in English, if we want to indicate something is plural, we do that by the s the S at the end of the word, whereas in French, you'll change the article and pronounce the article differently in order to indicate plural. So for example, you might say la voiture, les voitures, but in English we would say the car, the cars. The next mistake I want to talk about are extra articles being added. So for example, if I say je prends l'anglais, I am learning English, we would put l'anglais, we'd put the le, the L, in with English. But in English, we would just say, I am learning English. We wouldn't say, I am learning the English. And a lot of times, French speakers can put that extra article in there, definite article, usually, in fact, almost always, because it's so common in French. So there are many times where we can remove the article, whereas in French, you would actually use the article. So you want to be aware of these situations where we have this. So the next one I want to talk about are infinitives, because in English we put to with our infinitive, whereas in French it's just kind of one word in most situations. Obviously there are different situations where it's reflexive pronoun or something, but in English you always want to remember to. So if we're saying, I want to go to the store, a lot of French speakers might say, I want go to the store, because they're not used to putting the to there. Usually find this as more of a mistake with A1 or A2 speakers, but intermediate speakers sometimes make this as well. So make sure to remember the to if you're adding an infinitive in your sentence. The next mistake will be present continuous or present simple. Because we really don't have this distinction in French, and we can many times use the same thing for both present continuous and present simple, I find that a lot of French learners automatically divert to the present continuous, and really sometimes can't differentiate between when you use present simple or present continuous. So you want to make sure that you understand the rules for those and understand why we might use continuous in one case and simple in another case. This is also the case with past simple and past continuous as well. Now the next one comes to words and confusing words. So do and make. A lot of French speakers will say, I make something instead of I do something. And you want to remember, do is mostly going to be focused on some sort of action or process or something that is being performed, whereas make might be more to create. Now, that's not always the case. We can say, I made my bed, and that could actually mean I actually created my bed, or I arranged the blankets and pillows on there nicely to make sure it looks nice. Make and do can sometimes have some different overlaps that don't seem the same, but overall, they're usually in their certain camps. So make sure that you understand the difference between make and do. The next one is the difference between take and have when we're talking about food. So a lot of French speakers might use take to indicate they are having a meal, but we would use have. So for example, in French, you might say, j'ai pris mon petit déjeuner, right? Where you're saying, I take my breakfast. In this situation, if you're using take, it might indicate more like importer, that it's a takeaway, it's a carry out, that you're actually taking the food and bringing it somewhere with you. Whereas in English, we would usually say, I am having my breakfast, or just I am eating my breakfast. So make sure that you know that take is more likely going to be used for importer, to carry out or something like that, whereas having is going to be more focused on eating where you are. The next two words that are kind of confusing are the words sports or sport and exercise, because in French you obviously have faire du sport, but in American English at least, this could be a little different in British English, we usually use sports or the word sport as a physical activity that has some sort of competitive element to it, that it's a competition. Otherwise, if we are just doing something to benefit our body and exerting some sort of energy or doing something physical to help our body, we would just use exercise. So I could say, I exercised at the gym today. We wouldn't say I did sport at the gym. As a matter of fact, we don't use that phrase in English. We don't use the phrase I did sport. We would say either I exercised, or if you're using sport, you can say I played basketball today, I played hockey today, I played tennis today. And this is the main difference between sport and exercise. So the next one is going to be adverb placement. So for example, toujours will be after a verb, and a lot of people, when they're translating it from French to English, might still keep that preposition in that place. So they might say, I go always to the store. And in English, this is kind of unfortunate because I feel in French, the adverb rules are really strict and precise, and you can easily learn the adverb placement. But in English, they kind of float all over the place. So you always want to remember when you're looking at adverbs, try to see the positions that they are in, because adverbs can be the trickiest thing. Like toujours, or if someone's saying all the time, always, even, I don't know even what to do. You will hear this a lot of times with French speakers. So just be aware of the adverb placement. So one of the problems can be prepositions of time and place, because the prepositions can have a little bit of a difference. And because some sound very similar to one another, a lot of people can confuse them. So for example, somebody who is French might say, I arrived at Chicago, where you would say, I arrived in Chicago, because they think, and they translate that to at, which in most cases it is. But in this case, we would say, I arrived in Chicago. And this would be, someone might confuse it with en and think, this is the same word. So you always want to make sure that you're using the prepositions that are correct. Now, I usually only find this problem with place and time, but using other prepositions in a sentence, I don't see many mistakes. So focus more on the time and place preposition when speaking English. The next one can be adverb and adjective confusion. And I will admit, I do this with French. So I will get, mal and mauvais, mauvaise. I'll get them mixed up. I'll think that one is the adjective and one is the adverb, and it's the wrong way. And this happens with French speakers speaking English as well. And it happens with a lot of speakers from all different types of languages, that they accidentally use the adverb when they mean to use the adjective. So just be aware of if something is an adverb or if something is an adjective when you're speaking. And another side note about adjectives, even though in French and English, the placement of the adjectives are quite different, especially when they're connected to the noun, I find that a lot of French speakers don't make mistakes with adjectives. So I would probably say you're probably doing well with adjectives if you don't have a lot of confidence. I do find this to not be as big of a mistake as some people think. Another thing I want to talk about, and it's actually not necessarily a grammar mistake, is when French people say we are 10 people instead of there are 10 of us, or there were 10 of us. And I actually did some research on this, and the grammatical structure of this is correct. But in English, we would usually say there were 10 of us. So we could say, we went to an event last night and there were 3 of us at the event. Whereas most French speakers would say, we went to an event last night and we were 3 people. This wouldn't sound correct in English, but I was kind of surprised to see that this actually is grammatically correct, and it makes sense with the sentence structure that it is. So one thing I did mention at the beginning of the video was something specifically for people who are French Canadian speakers. Now, as someone who lived in Montreal, I noticed that there is a difference in the way that Quebecers speak compared to other Franco-Canadians or people from France. So a lot of times French speakers will be not necessarily monotone, but very, very smooth with the word transition, whereas a lot of speakers in Quebec particularly can have a very up and down and very sharp change in the stress within their sentence. So I'm going to give you a video of Francois Legault, who is the current premier of Quebec. I want you to listen how we have this difference in how he speaks. So let me play the clip for you.
For McGill, for Anglophone institutions, I think we cannot say, like I read, that all the money came from the individuals. They came from the government of Quebec, and I'm proud of that.
So you hear it came from the government of. It kind of goes up and down, and so you could see this up and down part where the stress is maybe in the wrong place, and it just sounds very much like an up and down graph instead of smooth. Now let me give you a teenager from Ontario. He's Franco-Ontarian, and listen to how he speaks, and just notice the difference in the smoothness of the speech.
I feel like we need to tell Doug Ford that, like, he can't do that, and we want our French, like, university, we want to be served in French in Ontario, because even though we're, like, minority, we have a right to be served in French.
And you can hear a bit of an accent in there, but it seems like it's much, much smoother. So again, I just say this, that if you are Quebecois or even French Canadian, there sometimes is this little bit of the stress maybe being in the wrong place. Just be aware of that, because I guarantee you when I did my introduction at the beginning of this video, my stresses were probably totally in the wrong place as well. So, I'm not trying to throw stones from glass houses, but I'm just saying from an English standpoint that this does happen. So thank you all very much for joining me today. Again, if you would like to see more content about helping French speakers learn English, please let me know. Comment below. I hope this helped you out a little bit. Again, this isn't an exhaustive list. This isn't all the mistakes there are. These are some of the mistakes I wanted to put in a video that are the primary mistakes that I notice, and most of these apply for both people in France and the Francophone community as a whole. But again, please let me know if you'd like more content. I plan to do more regarding French on this channel. And also, as I mentioned before, if you are learning English and you want a French resource that speaks almost primarily French in their videos, please check out Lay English. It's really, really a good channel, and she does an excellent job at what she does. So thank you all very much. Have a wonderful day wherever it is you are. That just, my mouth did not want to work there. Absolutely did not want to work. So yeah, we can't make mistakes. So I'll just say goodbye, see you later, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.